Tonight's big stories. President Bongbong Marcos delivers a historic keynote address at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, becoming the first Philippine head of state to speak before the Global Defense Summit.
Earlier today, the president also met with Singapore's top leaders, with both sides committing to strengthening bilateral diplomatic and economic relations.
And on World No Tobacco Day, the health department says that it has recorded the country's first vape-related death, that of a 22-year-old male with no prior health issues.
Good evening. Welcome to the show. I'm Regina.
I'm Gretchen.
And I'm Shawn.
As we speak, President Marcos is making history and delivering his keynote address at the 21st Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, which is known as Asia's top security summit and which brings together defense officials from around the world. We will dip into the live stream in just a little bit, but to set the context for this, again, this is known as Asia's top defense summit. We are expecting more than 550 delegates from the defense and security establishments of more than 40 nations around the world. Imagine 550 all in one ballroom.
And and this is, of course, the 21st such dialogue.
Yes, every year it's being held at the Shangri-La Hotel in Singapore, which is where it derives its name.
Well, important people are there. For one, the U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is there. China's defense minister is there. Ukraine President Zelensky will come also on Sunday.
Oh wow! Okay.
It does hold all the
which makes me think. In the meantime, who is managing the security?
I know, right?
Departments of all these countries. But anyways, you're right.
But actually, to add to what Gretchen just said, the Defense Secretary of the United States, Lloyd Austin, and China's Defense Minister, Admiral Dong Jun, they did have a 75-minute meeting where they talked about a lot of thorny issues, including, of course, Taiwan, Russia, and the elephant in the room, the South China Sea.
Of course, which President Marcos is expected to address. And we are seeing him on the big screen right now delivering the opening remarks. We will dip into that feed just after he finishes the formalities. But to recap as well, with the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Chinese Defense Minister Admiral Dong Jun, they met this afternoon, the first such meeting, the first face-to-face meeting since 2022. Of course, they talked about the three topics Shawn said, Taiwan, South China Sea, and Russia. On Taiwan, the U.S. government said in a readout of the meeting that Austin expressed his concern over China's recent, quote-unquote, recent provocative activity around the Taiwan Strait, and that Beijing should not use Taiwan's political transition as a pretext for coercive measures. There's a lot of heavily loaded words there.
Right, and just to set the context also, and to remind everyone, in case you missed it, China did conduct a large-scale military exercises in waters around Taiwan last week, which one U.S. officer said looked like a rehearsal for an invasion. That's pretty terrifying, right? And China's side did later tell journalists that they warned Secretary Austin that the United States should not interfere with Taiwanese affairs.
Well, let's go to what we're interested in on the South China Sea, particularly the West Philippine Sea. Austin said he made clear that the U.S. will continue to fly, sail, and operate there, and they will continue to fight for freedom of navigation in that area. So it is the same statement that they've
been consistent
about it. You know who else is consistent, Reg? Of course, China.
Yes.
After these meetings, they always have good words to say. No different this time. They said they described that meeting as positive, practical, constructive. They said, and I'm going to quote, the two sides agree that a stable U.S.-China military-to-military relationship is important. And
I think that's something that no one will argue with, because it is what we're all after. It's just that there's a lot of underlying tensions at the moment and conflicting interests, of course. One other takeaway from this afternoon is the grouping known as the FPDA, the Five Power Defense Agreement. FPDA, said that's Australia, Britain, Malaysia, New Zealand, and Singapore announced that they will stage bigger and more complex military drills this year. So that's something to watch out for. As promised, we will now dip into the live stream of President Marcos delivering his historic address at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, live right now.
We are on the front lines of efforts to assert the integrity of the UNCLOS as a constitution of the oceans. We have defined our territory and maritime zones in a manner befitting a responsible and law-abiding member of the international community. We have submitted our assertions to rigorous legal scrutiny by the world's leading jurists. So the lines that we draw in our waters are not derived from just our imagination, but from international law. We have on our side the 1982 UNCLOS and the binding 2016 arbitral award, which affirms what is ours by legal right. In this solid footing and through our clear moral ascendancy, we find the strength to do whatever it takes to protect our sovereign home, to the last square inch, to the last square millimeter. The life-giving waters of the West Philippine Sea flow in the blood of every Filipino. We cannot allow anyone to detach it from the totality of the maritime domain that renders our nation whole. As President, I have sworn to this solemn commitment from the very first day that I took office. I do not intend to yield. Filipinos do not yield. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not only unyielding in protecting our patrimony, our rights, and our dignity as a proud and as a free country. We are also firm in our commitment to regional and global peace. We renew this commitment at this turbulent juncture of our history. I will repeat what I said at the United Nations almost 2 years ago. Amidst challenging global tides, an important ballast stabilizes our common vessel. Our open, inclusive, and rules-based international order is governed by international law and informed by the principles of equity and of justice. For the past 79 years, this rules-based order has allowed our region to flourish. The stability and the predictability that it has engendered has been crucial to the success of the stories of our region. Be it the post-war revival of Japan, the economic miracles of Korea and in Southeast Asia, the rise of China and of India. When this world order was built in 1945, our forebears vowed to make the floors of the United Nations the last battlefield. We made a determination for humanity to survive and to never again be wiped out in another Holocaust. The Philippines has always been part of that history. Amidst the rubble of war, we were there, amongst the architects of the new peace. We stood on behalf of colonized peoples of Africa and Asia. We opposed attempts to dilute the inviolability of the right to self-determination. We helped enshrine the right to independence in the Charter of the United Nations. In 1982, we led our global community in unanimously adopting the Manila Declaration on the Peaceful Settlement of Disputes. This affirmed that differences amongst nations must always be solved peacefully through legal and diplomatic processes, never through the threat or the use of force. Today, these norms are under significant stress. The world is facing a watershed moment. In our region, recent patterns of aggression and militarization and emerging arms races threaten our lands of promise with an uncertain future. In the midst of these significant shifts, I see 7 realities in the Indo-Pacific. First, the future of our region will be determined by many nations, each with its own unique experiences and aspirations. Yet, their respective agencies are being challenged by attempts to undermine our faith in prevailing international norms. Second, the strategic competition between China and the United States is permeating the evolving regional landscape. This rivalry is constraining the strategic choices of regional states. This contest is exacerbating flashpoints and has created new security dilemmas. Third, the region looks to ASEAN as the institution that will hold the center amidst these evolving dynamics. Yet, challenges threaten our unity and our centrality. Fourth, as geopolitics continues to permeate the global governance infrastructure, the role of bridge builders have become increasingly important to forge decisive multilateral solutions. Fifth, the global commons will continue to be crucial to the security of all states in the region. Access of developing countries to the high seas and to outer space and the peaceful uses of science and technologies is crucial to international development. Sixth, climate change remains a deadly challenge for the region and for the world. It is the first truly global threat, and for the first time, we face a crisis that affects every single human being on Earth and requires action from every single human being as well. And finally, the development of advanced technologies is rapidly transforming human life and experience. These technologies will solve many of our old problems, but they are so powerful that they also have the potential to disrupt our political and our social orders. These 7 realities muddle the waters that we have to navigate in our collective journey as a community of nations. We cannot reverse course. We must persevere. We must push through. The current juncture does not call for a revision of the regional order. Instead, it calls for the reaffirmation of the wisdom of San Francisco in 1945, of Bangkok in 1967, and of Manila in 1982. Let us return to San Francisco and reaffirm the sovereign equality of all states. We must reject unjust narratives that seek to subsume distinct national interest in a so-called major country dynamic, which seeks to impose a hierarchy amongst nations. Those who came before us worked painstakingly throughout the last century to bury the era of spheres of influence and of buffer states. We should not allow its ghost to haunt our region once again. Let us also return to Bangkok and support ASEAN's effort to build a rules-based, people-oriented, and centered on regional community. Any state that professes a stake in the continued peace and stability of this region must respect ASEAN centrality, not only with words, but with action. All partnerships and arrangements must never displace or dilute, but rather uphold and complement ASEAN's central role. So let us return as well to Manila and reaffirm our common understanding of how international law governs the peaceful settlement of disputes. Amidst misleading narratives that seek to discredit international legal procedures, there is a need to reaffirm those modalities are an expression of good faith. They are a service to the progressive development and codification of international law. They are never an unfriendly act. Ladies and gentlemen, the past inspires the needed clarity and foresight to confront the challenges of the present and to build a future to which we all aspire. From the achievements of San Francisco, Bangkok, Manila, we as a region draw our abiding compass. First, the sovereign equality of states must remain sacrosanct. Second, ASEAN and ASEAN-led processes must remain central. Third, the rule of law and the integrity of multilateralism must prevail. These 3 constants guide our efforts to prepare ourselves for the challenges ahead. We need to begin by resoundingly rejecting misguided interpretations that paint our region as a mere theater of geopolitical rivalries. We are not mere bystanders to unfolding world events. We are the actors that drive those events. We are the main characters in our collective story. We are the owners of the narratives of our regional community. Thus, we reject any attempt to deny strategic agencies, especially by force, that seek to subordinate our interests to anyone else's. China's determining influence over the security situation and the economic evolution of this region is a permanent fact. At the same time, the stabilizing presence of the United States is crucial to regional peace. It's never a choice. Both countries are important. The continued stability of this region requires China and the United States to manage that rivalry in a responsible manner. Pending the total elimination of nuclear weapons, China and the United States have a unique responsibility to undertake concrete measures to reverse the recent increase in nuclear stockpiles and to alleviate the risks of nuclear conflict. For a long time, nuclear disarmament, the nuclear disarmament discourse has focused on the Euro-Atlantic. Together with our strategic partners, Australia and Japan, the Philippines has been seeking to bring Indo-Pacific issues to the fore. We promote nuclear risk reduction in the region through the ASEAN Regional Forum. We push for the negotiations for a fissile material cut-off treaty at the United Nations. We will not waver in these efforts. Our work towards a world free of nuclear weapons is rooted in our desire to extinguish the last vestiges of the Cold War. Yet the danger of regional regression towards Cold War thinking has never been more pronounced. It has become even more crucial for us to assert that the future of our region will be driven not by one or two powerful countries, but by all of us. Peace, security, and stability are the business of all countries. The interests and responsibilities of all states in the community of nations must always be acknowledged. All our voices must be equally heard. As a Pacific nation, the Philippines shares with our eastern kin the same experience of a climate-vulnerable country. It is clear to us that the Pacific Island states must become part of any meaningful discussion regarding the future of our region. It's time to put the Pacific back into Indo-Pacific. We also share with South Asia states similar aspirations as rapidly growing economies. Their continued development rests upon the maintenance of peace and stability in the Indian Ocean region. In the same vein, the economic security of East Asia depends upon the freedom of navigation and unimpeded passage in the South China Sea and in the East China Sea, and the stability
Voice
of the
of
Korean
man.
Okay,
what a
again,
brave
that was
speech.
That was
President
spicy.
Marcos at the 21st Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, happening right now. And that is a pretty strong address to kick off the security summit with. What were your takeaways?
Well, he did have the courage to call out the major superpowers, US and China, for one. He said, I call on the US and China to manage their rivalry.
I like that part because
was the best part of it.
typically world leaders would skirt around and not name countries, but for him to openly call out, listen, US and China it needs to manage their rivalry, their competition, because it affects all of us. I think that's saying a lot.
It is saying a lot because we keep talking about the elephant in the room. Well, as of now, it's officially not an elephant in the room anymore. It has been said in a platform. And as you have been pointing out, this is a big, big stage. Again, over 500 delegates from over 40 countries in that sector, specifically defense and security.
Well, it feels like a little brother telling everyone, please listen to me. My voice matters in this room.
He
And
certainly-
we are all responsible for this house.
He
We
also
are
did
all responsible for peace. And one of the
Correct.
lines that he said was, all our voices must be equally heard. And I hope that generates some headlines around the world, right? President Marcos saying, again, all our voices must be equally heard. Again, not addressing anyone or any country specifically, but just to say that the peace and stability within this region and all around the world is reliant on all of us. And everyone must have equal say in the matter.
I think everyone has skin in the game. That's kind of what he's saying. And if we want to attain peace, then everyone is responsible for working towards that. But I still feel like that was really spicy. I'm not sure I quite expected that from President Bongbong Marcos. But you're right. If you are given this opportunity at this exact timing, right, he did not waste the stage.
He
at
did
all.
put the ASEAN at the center of that speech. He said, don't use us, calling on the superpowers not to use the ASEAN region as a theater for these major actors to compete. And he acknowledged that the contest between the superpowers was exacerbating flashpoints in the South China Sea.
ASEAN must hold the center, as the president pointed out, one of the 7 priorities that he outlined, the other being again, the strategic competition between US and China needs to be managed because it's exacerbating tensions even in this region, right? Some of the other lines that I really like that he says, the lines that we've drawn around the South China Sea are not imagined. Those are,
I like,
he says,
I like-
that's not based on our imagination and that we will fight for our territory or sovereignty to the last square inch and to the last square millimeter.
I like what he said. Filipinos do not yield.
Proudly.
Proudly.
The role of bridge building as well has become even more important at a time like this when geopolitical conflicts are taking center stage.
He did focus on having strengthening multilateral relationships as a solution to this.
Which, you know, is something that China has been saying as well. Baliktad pala. It's what the U.S. has been saying, China has been saying, dialogue is what should work in these
bilateral,
instances.
yeah.
Correct. So it's a different approach. U.S. prefers multilateralism by bringing in all these countries as part of the discussion. China prefers one-on-one dialogue, right? So that's going to be something to discuss from there.
Well, President Marcos is still in the middle of his speech, but he did have a full day heading into the Shangri-La Dialogue. Let's bring in Julie Baiza, who is with us live from Singapore to tell us about his meetings before that keynote address. Magandang gabi, Julie. Talk us through the bilateral meeting between President Marcos, Singaporean Prime Minister Wong, and Singaporean President Shanmugaratnam.
Good evening, Reg, Gretchen, and Shawn. Pagpapatibay sa bilateral relations ng Pilipinas at Singapore, yan yung naging sentro ng bilateral meeting ni Pangulong Bongbong Marcos kaya Prime Minister Lawrence Wong kaninang umaga. Kailangan din daw i-explore yung mga bagong partnership pagitan ng dalawang bansa. Sa bilateral meeting, binigyan din ni President Marcos na isa ang Singapore sa top sources ng Foreign Direct Investment or FDI ng Pilipinas. Natutuwa din si PBBM na nabanggit ni Wong yung New Clark City sa naging pag-uusap nila. Minention niya kay Wong yung plano ng gobyerno na gawin daw yung industrial center with all facilities such as manufacturing, semiconductor assembly, and green mineral processing. Ang sabi ng Pangulo, pwede raw mag-invest sa mga yan yung mga Singaporean investors. For his part naman, PM Wong said that there is a strong cooperation and positive momentum in the relationship in business between the two countries. Na-mention din ni Prime Minister Wong yung people-to-people exchanges at nangako siya na mangangalaga sa kapakanan ng over 200,000 OFWs here in Singapore. Around 60% sa kanila yung professionals, nasa IT, architecture, at nurses and or healthcare workers. Tapos around 40% naman yung ating mga nasa household workers.
Julie, meron bang nabanggit tungkol sa defense cooperation?
So far, walang binanggit na may kaugnayan sa defense cooperation or other mga agreements din na nalagdaan na during the bilateral meeting. No? We're assuming na talagang itong meeting nila ay naging discussion or pag-uusap lang, and we're still waiting for more updates from the palace.
Okay, Julie, nakipagpulong din no, si Presidente Marcos sa dating Prime Minister at ngayong Senior Minister ng Singapore na si Lee Hsien Loong. Kamusta naman at alam ba natin kung anong napag-usapan ng dalawa?
According to incoming Senior Minister Lee Hsien Loong, nagkaroon sila ng discussions on social media trends and technology, including yung epekto ng deep fakes and artificial intelligence. Challenges daw ng extremism sa region, and they vowed to continue yung close collaboration and information sharing ng dalawang bansa. Kung maaalala natin, maganda yung relasyon ni Pangulong Bongbong Marcos kaya incoming Senior Minister Lee. Ilang beses na niyang nakaharap yan sa mga event. In fact, si former PM Lee yung nag-imbita sa Pangulo dito sa 3 araw ng working visit sa Singapore, and kanina nagkaharap din sila pagdating ng Pangulo, kaharap si Prime Minister Wong din nung isa sa mga sumalubong sa Pangulo papasok dito sa Shangri-La Dialogue.
And then lastly, Julie, what's on the rest of his schedule bago siya umuwi ng Pilipinas?
After nitong dialogue, magkakaroon ng dinner yung mga dumalo or mga delegado nitong Shangri-La Dialogue. After nyan, uuwi na ang Pangulo diretso pa uwi sa Pilipinas. Pero isisingit ko na lang din kasi bago magsimula yung forum, nagkaroon tayo ng pagkakataon to talk with AFP Chief of Staff Romeo Browner. Nabanggit mo dyan yung na concern daw siya sa bagong policy ng China na i-detain yung trespassers sa South China Sea. Kasi common fishing grounds daw yun at hindi lang naman Pilipino yung mga nangingisda doon. Ang sabi pa nga niya, tayo mga Pilipino, hindi tayo madadamot sa port game ang pinapayagan nga raw natin ng mga isda, yung mga dayuhan kahit kung mismo sa exclusive economic zone na ng Pilipinas. Tumanggi naman magsalita si Browner doon sa sinabi ng Chinese spies daw na may mga napasok daw ng mga espiya yung PCG, sabi niya ongoing daw kasi yung investigation dyan. Ilalatan ko na rin din yung meeting ni Defense Secretary Gilbert Tudoro kasi isa rin siya sa may mga mahalagang role dito, lalo defense and security yung usapin dito. Si Secretary Gilbert Tudoro magkakaroon siya ng bilateral meeting kaya Canada Minister of Defense Bill Blair, Minister of Defense ng New Zealand, South Korea at Singapore.
Okay. Thank you for that very comprehensive wrap. Julie Baiza reporting live from Singapore. Before we go to break, I wanted to point out that there are the lines dropping on Twitter already about President Marcos's speech, and so far it's looking good. Lots of people commending his poise, his confidence. Yung line that you like is, the exact line is, I do not intend to yield. Filipinos do not yield. And I'm guessing that's going to make a lot of headlines across the world in the newspapers.
It's short, it's snappy, PR-wise, it's a good copy.
And
Really
it's
good copy.
it sends a very strong message.
As we know, there's criticism with the Philippines kowtowing to the United States.
Yes, that's right.
Being used as a puppet
Right.
in what's happening.
Like a proxy
In the
war,
US
this is going to be the new
China
proxy
war.
war.
Right.
So this is a strong response to that, and definitely, he did it so bravely.
I think it would shake up things a bit. A lot of people, a lot of pundits are saying, maybe we should try to eke out more from America. This clearly shows him calling out America that maybe we should reconsider thinking that we are puppet state.
Let's see what he comes back home with from this defense summit.
Well, up next, why has the divorce bill caused so much discontent in the Senate? We'll break it down with attorney Virginia Viray, senior lecturer at the UP College of Law, when we return. Welcome back. You're still watching today's story here on One News.
Debate over the divorce bill continues to swirl online and in the halls of Senate, where at least 5 lawmakers remain staunchly opposed to it. To recap, the 5 who are against are supposedly Senate President Cheese Escudero and Senators Francis Tolentino, Joel Villanueva, Bato de la Rosa, and Jinggoy Estrada. They cite a number of reasons, from religion to conservativeness and a preference for annulment. To weigh in on the matter now, we have with us on the show live attorney Virginia Viray. She's a senior lecturer at the UP College of Law and also a member of UP Law's Gender Law and Policy Program. Attorney Viray, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us, and I apologize for getting to you late. It was a bit heavy, very heavy first block for us.
No worries. Good evening, everyone.
Okay, so let's tackle some of these arguments that the lawmakers are throwing at us one by one. The very first one has to do with divorce law not being needed, considering that we already have annulment. That's an argument that Senate President Cheese Escudero has made. He says we should just make more affordable annulments. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first off, I disagree with a good senator. I think that misses the point about the core issue about annulment. He said that we should just make it affordable, but it doesn't address the fact that the problem with annulment is that the offended spouse will have to prove that the offending spouse, the psychological incapacity of the offending spouse, was already existent at the time of the celebration of marriage. And that is very difficult to prove. No? This annulment, we often refer to it as annulment. It's actually the declaration of nullity of marriage under Article 36 of the Family Code. No? And the reason for the ground for annulment is the psychological incapacity of the offending spouse. It's very difficult to prove that it is already inexistent at the time of the celebration of marriage. And that is actually what is making the process very expensive. Okay, that's very expensive. So it's very elitist also, and that is what the divorce bill that was recently passed in the lower house was trying to address. And hopefully, if it gets passed also by the Senate, it becomes law that addresses the issue, the very core issue.
Right.
Because in the divorce bill, the psychological incapacity no longer needs to be at the point of the celebration of marriage.
When you say it's very expensive, can you give us more context on that? How much typically does annulment cost, and how tedious is the process?
Prior to a recent case, it was mandatory. That's the party trying to prove psychological incapacity had to hire a psychologist or a psychiatrist to prove the psychological incapacity. Of course, recently, it's no longer mandatory, but you still have to prove it one way or the other. It is typical for a case to last for several years. So imagine the legal cost. Typically, that would be at least 300,000 minimum for you to get an annulment.
Right. So
We call the annulment declaration of nullity of marriage.
I have some friends who spent like 400 something. That seems to be the average amongst those whom I know who have been able to pay. So it is quite steep. Let's move on over, Attorney Viray, to the other argument, this time coming from our former Senate President, Mig Zubiri. He says he is not in favor of divorce because he is pro-family and pro-life. The worry is, will this actually open the floodgates to U.S.-style divorce and Las Vegas-style weddings? And then so far, he was saying that along those lines, this would lead to dysfunctional families. Now, the other argument to that is that, this actually happens all the time anyway. Why don't we just... And even if you make... the option available, people don't actually have to take it if they are pro-family.
Yes, you raised very good points, actually. First, let's go to the Las Vegas-style divorce. If we look at the House Bill 9349, which was passed by the lower house, it only provides for very serious grounds for the divorce. No? In fact, those are the same grounds for legal separation, except that it actually allows the offended spouse to move on, right? Not be bound to the offending spouse even after the separation. So you can actually sever the ties there. Also, psychological incapacity is also one of the grounds, except that you no longer have to prove that it was inexistent at the time of marriage. It can also occur after marriage, which means that the abuse that is being experienced by the abused spouse can be the evidence in itself of the psychological incapacity. So those are very serious grounds. There is no fault divorce in the proposed bill.
Attorney,
So that's go ahead.
Attorney, is it possible to divorce the state from the church? For example, legalize divorce for the state. For those who get civil marriages, don't legalize it for those who have church weddings. Is it possible to make that separation? Because it is, I mean, marriage is very, the sanctity of marriage must be honored according to religion. But how about those who have a different belief?
Yes. Well, we all have enjoyed the free exercise of religion and worship, and that is worthy of respect. One thing to note, even in the case of declaration of nullity of marriage, under Article 36, for instance, even if you get annulled, that is a civil annulment, and the church does not recognize that. So there is really no reason to conflate the civil aspect of the divorce and annulment as to the civil aspect and also the religious aspect. The civil aspect of marriage.
Is there a way?
So is it possible to divorce? Yes, because those are two separate things.
What about
The civil
legal-
aspect and the religious.
Legal
Yes.
separation, attorney, how does that figure in? A lot of people are also pointing out that this already exists for civil weddings. Some people apparently like to just limit it to a civil wedding so that they can avail the legal separation, which is the only kind of available move if you are here in the Philippines and you got married here. Is that not enough, or is this divorce? So how is it different from the actual legal separation that has been going on here and it is acceptable here for a while now?
I think, yes, thank you. I think what we must clarify here is that legal separation doesn't actually dissolve the marriage. You still remain married. There is just certain effects of legal separation. Like, for example, the properties of the spouses are already settled and divided. But for all intents and purposes, they are still married. The marriage bond is still there. Okay, and I think that is what I guess conservatives are after. But if you think about it, it's very cruel, right? So after an abused spouse has already been abused, she has to remain bound and married to her abuser, right? And for what? Just so that we can say that the marriage bond wasn't broken, when for all intents and purposes, the marriage is broken. They are separate. They're separated now.
So, attorney,
Also, in the case of legal separation, even the abused spouse is not allowed to remarry and to move on with her life, even after annulment, is that or the declaration of nullity is that it is void from the very beginning, right? And if you increase the grounds, like in this case, in the case of the divorce bill, it actually increases the grounds such that the psychological incapacity may be only existed after marriage. But it's not, in which case it doesn't make the marriage void, right? It recognizes that the marriage was valid. So it's not really nullity, right? The marriage was valid, except that, well, there was psychological incapacity after the marriage, and therefore you can get divorced. In that sense, it's really very different. It recognizes that the marriage was valid, so it's not annulment or declaration of nullity.
right. So it does
But
have.
it's really severing the ties of marriage after a valid marriage.
So it does have very clear legal implications. We're going to have to leave that there for tonight, but thank you so much for your insights tonight. Attorney Virginia Viray, she's a senior lecturer at the UP College of Law.
We're going to be pausing for a quick break. Right after that, the country has recorded its first vaping-related death. We will be giving you the details on that when we return. Keep it here.
welcome back. You are still watching the big story here on One News.
Big news over in the United States. Former U.S. President Donald Trump is now a convicted felon after having been found guilty in a historic criminal hush money trial. He's now officially the first U.S. president to have been charged and convicted of a crime. A New York City jury delivered the verdict after a 7-week-long trial and found Trump guilty on all 34 counts. These were related to falsifying business documents in relation to a hush money payment made to adult film star Stormy Daniels in the run-up to the 2016 U.S. presidential elections. Prosecutors argued that Trump attempted to cover up the payment in an effort to improve his chances in the race, which he ultimately won. The former Republican president, who is set to face off against Democratic incumbent Joe Biden in November's election, had pleaded not guilty. But with this decision, Trump now faces a prison sentence of up to 4 years for each felony count. He will be sentenced on July 11, but is expected to appeal before then. Outside the courtroom, Trump briefly spoke to reporters, slamming the decision.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. And this was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent. And I think it's just a disgrace. And we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end and we'll win because our country's gone to hell.
It is World No Tobacco Day, and to mark the occasion, the Health Department raised its warning against vaping. That's as the agency confirms that it has recorded the country's first vape-related death. The victim was a 22-year-old male who died of a heart attack due to severe lung injury. He had no known comorbidities and had no history of alcohol or cigarette smoking. His only vice was vaping every day over the past 2 years before his death in 2023. With this, the Health Department and other health experts are warning the youth of the dangers of e-cigarettes. Health advocates, officials, and some lawmakers are also pushing for stricter regulations on vaping, particularly to raise the age requirement to buy vape products from the current 18 to 21.
Sobrang watered down yon kasi nga yung access from 21 years naging 18 years old, yung flavors pwede na, and then yung jurisdiction tinanggal sa DTI. Nakita nyo naman yung mga reports, and can you imagine a generation of children now addicted to products that are very harmful na nakakamatay pa.
Yung puso nyo, okay lang masaktan kung pag-ibig, pero wag yung saktan na vape ang gamit.
And before we go, time now for our big picture tonight. Well, I know that the president is quite busy, but he did not forget to pen a short birthday greeting for Secretary of Education and Vice President Sara Duterte. In a post, the president wrote, "Happy birthday, Inday Sara. Pinalakas ng iyong sipag at pagmamahal sa bayan ang ating mga kabataan at kagawaran," he said in a Facebook post. Ipagpatuloy lang natin ito para sa isang matatag na edukasyon sa ilalim ng bagong Pilipinas, the Chief Executive added. VP Sara is celebrating her 46th birthday today. Of course, Senator Amy Marcos also had her own greeting for her BFF during her show At the Moment with Amy, where VP Sara guested. The two even had a friendly banter in one part of the show. The question, sino daw oo yung mas manhid? Alamin natin.
Sino po ba ang mas sumpungin sa inyo, mas moody po?
Moody. Ako mainit ang ulo. Mas madali uminit ang ulo. Present.
Wala na.
Ay, wala na. Manhid ka ni. Babaeng bato. Ano ba yan? Wala nang feeling.
Manhid na ako. Simula last year. Oo.
Starting last year. Before last year, normal ka pa.
Oo.
Anyari? Anyari last year na nagkaganyan ka? Ayun.
Tatanungin po ba namin yung magna-next question na po kami?
Oo, next question.
Parang calcified na yung nerves.
Public naman yung buhay ko eh. Balikan nyo lang yung mga
mga
pangyayari.
Tapos na-calcified na.
Oo,
Wala
na akong maramdaman.
Ganon?
Oo. Wala na akong maramdaman.
Wala na kahit kabugin ng kabugin.
Wala na.
Nako, kawawa
Kiligin.
naman.
Namatay yung feelings ko.
Namatay ang feelings. Aray ko! Wala na siyang puso! Ayan.
VP, kilig, wala na rin. Kahit konting kilig, ganyan.
Wala na.
Grabe
Ano
naman
ba?
yan.
Ba't ka ganyan?
Hindi ko alam kung anong nangyari. Pinatay, hindi pala namatay, pinatay yung feelings ko.
Ouch! Naku, iyakan na tayo nito. Maglasing na lang.
To be fair,
That's
it's
pretty
the first
loaded.
time, and it's the first time I've seen
Different
the Vice
side.
President, like joking around, making parinig
siya
like
humugot.
mahilig siya
And
humugot
I've seen her
sa
joke
Instagram.
around, but
Mahilig siya humugot sa
speeches,
statement,
sa
sa speeches.
But those
pero-
are very loaded words. And also,
Correct.
we didn't miss the fact that they're both wearing green, ha?
Pero
That's gotta
iba
be a
yung-
message in itself.
Pero iba yung naisip ko nung sinabing babaeng bato.
Ah.
Iba yung na-imagine ko.
Ano yung imagine?
Si Bato
What
de
did you
la
do?
Rosa,
Bato na babae.
female version ni Senator Bato de la
Hindi,
Rosa.
pero feeling ko magaling si VP Sara sa poker.
Mm.
I mean, hindi mo mabasa yung ano niya, kung anong iniisip niya eh.
Yun nga,
But she says-
I barely hear her speaking, much less kind of joking around.
Sometimes
Ipaparinig. Sometimes she gives, but it's very...
ambush interview.
She
Measured.
says it with the same smile. And the
She
same
says
look.
it with one face.
Yeah.
You can't read her.
Galing.
Oh, we'll see
I
where...
know, but the fact that she says pinatay, yung
Hindi pala
feelings,
namatay, pinatay.
is in itself a message, right? She likes to,
Ganito
you
lang
know,
yan.
Like
Bato-bato
such
sa
lang yan.
langit.
Don't
Matataas.
read too much
she leaves
into it.
breadcrumbs. Oh, no. Politics is all about the signaling, right? It's all about the
The wording.
verbal message, the non-verbal messaging, right? So again,
So
the
while
fact
we
that they're
leave
both
everyone
wearing
to
green-
conjecture feeling,
I mean, let's get back to the speech of the president.
Well,
the
and
Q&A.
it's ended, and he did a Q&A at the Shangri-La Dialogue. It's such a heavy news day, no?
yeah, but we can catch up on the way home. I'm gonna watch the stream. I know it's ended now, but it's still there.
But also, stop vaping.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. According to the DOH, that's not me. Don't take my word for it. But sabi ng DOH, stop vaping.
It used to be such a myth kasi.
Today
na
is
parang
World
these,
No Tobacco Day.
diba? It used to be
Yan
such a
na,
myth
meron
na
na.
parang, no, sa States, we don't even know if that's true. But now, first confirmed by the DOH, and apparently this death is from last year. So I'm sure they did the necessary tests.
It's a bit scary. But,
Workout tayo.
Workout na lang tayo. Okay, enough na daw. Sabi ni Marie, that's it for the big story tonight and for the week.
Mabuhay ang mga pusong bato. We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Is that you?
Hindi, natututo ako.
Or you're saying that's VP Sara? Or is that
VP
you?
Sara, VP Sara.
I don't think that's you. But napatay din feelings.
Babaeng bato.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night and a great weekend.